On this episode, I share with you some of the things an FHA appraiser looks for. Welcome everyone to this episode of the Ask Jason Gelios show. I'm your host, Jason Gelios, Michigan Realtor. I appreciate you guys tuning in here. The questions, the comments, all the shares, the likes, I really appreciate that. So I want to dive into this question. One of my clients was asking me this a few days ago, and that's, what are some of the things that FHA looks for, right? So not every seller accepts FHA. There's a stigma out there that FHA takes a lot of work and they're extremely strict and all these things. So I kind of, I want to dive into some of the things that they do look for when they are appraising the home, because that's where FHA comes into play. So besides the fact that FHA loans and buyers typically try to get some seller credit back, right, through concessions, which I did another video on that on my YouTube channel. But basically, I just want to dive into some of the things that FHA looks for. And so I'm gonna basically cover a few things here. I put together a list here, and so I want to share that with you. So an FHA appraisal is usually different compared to a regular appraisal, right? A regular appraiser will come out and he'll look at the house and kind of determine the value, to where an FHA appraiser comes out, tries to determine the value, but will also look to make sure that it is typically FHA approved, right? So inside the house, and I'm gonna break this down, inside the house, outside the house, and then some of the safety hazards, right? So an FHA appraiser will typically look at the major components. So they're gonna look at heating and air conditioning systems. They're gonna look at are there exposed or frayed electrical wires? Are there GFI switches by the sinks where they should be? All those things, floor heaters. If you have a solar heater, a solar heated home, they're gonna look at that too, although that's rare, right? But they're gonna look at things that could potentially be dangerous to a home buyer. And so as we dive into the outside of the house, they just wanna make sure that the inside of the home is safe and secure. So those are some of the things that they actually look for. Now, in terms of outside the house, one of the biggest things that I've seen in my career is they will look at roofs. Roofs are, in my opinion, the number one thing that they look at when they actually pull up to the house. They look and see, how is the roof? Is it leaking? Are there issues? Does it look like it's at the end of its life? Is it really bad? Things like that. So, but outside the house, they're gonna look at typically a maximum of 3 layers of roofing. Now, I would never do 3 layers of roofing, and I've never seen 3 layers of roofing, at least in my career. 2 layers is usually the max, but they're gonna note that, okay, it's pretty much been done twice. So they're gonna look at the attic, the interior of the home as well. We mentioned that, right? They're gonna look at, are there leaks, right? Are there leaks coming into the roof? That's a big red flag. If a roof is leaking, chances are FHA is gonna want it repaired or replaced, quite honestly. And I have had that happen before on a home. So water is the number one thing, right? So they're gonna look outside and see, okay, is wood rotted on the home? If you have wood, if it's siding, is the siding damaged and water's getting in there? They're gonna look for those major things. So, okay, now, one of the big things too is if you're buying a home that has a well and septic, then you wanna make sure, or rather, the FHA appraiser is going to make sure that the well is far enough from the house, per guidelines, right? Per the city, it has to be a certain distance from the home, and they're gonna look at the condition of that. So, and a lot of times too, the lender will want a separate well and septic inspection. Actually, on a side note, I had one, it wasn't an FHA deal, but I had one where my buyer got a well and septic inspection and found out that the septic field was not working properly. It was gonna fail, or it is failing actually. And they do this, that's a whole nother topic actually, but they do this when they do the inspection. They basically see if it's failing or not. So, okay, now I wanna talk about bugs. An appraiser does not inspect for bugs, but they will do a brief look to see if there's termite damage, if the, carpenter ant damage in the walls, the bees, all of that fun stuff. You will have to have a separate pest inspection, and a lot of times they want a termite pest inspection where a company comes out and makes sure that it's solid, that it's good. So, but they're gonna look for things like that. On the outside of the home, they're gonna look and see, is there evidence of bugs touching the home? A lot of times termites, you may be able to see a little mound or something coming. That's rare, but sometimes you can see that. It all depends. But you want to make sure that you have a pest inspection separate, and they're fairly cheap. Some companies will do one for free, some will do it for like $100 to $200, it just depends on who you call. Now, some of the safety hazards I want to go over. So some of the safety hazards, right? They're going to be looking for lead-based paint, which lead-based paint isn't used anymore, but if you have an older home, they're going to be looking for things like that. They're going to be looking for potential asbestos. They're going to be looking for toxic substances in the home, right? That may not pass the actual appraisal, and you might have to remove that, and then they come back out. Now, I want to go over some repairs. So the one key difference here between an appraisal and a conventional loan is that an appraisal for FHA insured loans is repairs. The most common example that I can give you is that, let's say a GFI switch, which is a grounded switch that is typically by a kitchen sink, a bathroom sink, right? That's a safety thing. If you don't have that and an FHA appraiser comes out and sees that, that has to be changed out to move forward. Any repairs that have to be made before you can actually move forward on the loan has to be done, and then the FHA appraiser has to come back. And usually that's, again, it varies depending on the lender you choose and the appraiser, but pretty much that can be an extra $100, $150, $300. It just depends on the size of the home as well, but they have to come back out and make sure that you did that. Now I want to share with you a quick story here. I had a client who was looking to buy a home, and the seller simply put the electrical panel, the electrical box in the basement the wrong way, and it wouldn't close on its own because there was a heating duct. Simple thing, but the seller just didn't think to put it on the right way. Took off the door, put it back on so it can close. A couple other issues too, but that was one of the things. They fixed the issues, the appraiser came back out, looked, took a picture, great, it works, move forward. So this seems like a lot, but really it's not a lot. I mean, ultimately, if an agent is selling your home and they're going to put on the MLS that it is FHA acceptable, that agent should make sure that the house is indeed FHA acceptable. Because I've seen it where agents just say, yeah, sure. Do you know, Mr. Mrs. Seller, do you wanna accept FHA? Great, let's go ahead and just put it on the MLS. Well, okay, you have to make sure, because nothing ticks off a buyer and a buyer's agent more than a listing agent that didn't do the work to make sure that the house is FHA acceptable or VA acceptable. On the flip side of that, I've seen houses that don't accept FHA and it's on the MLS, but the house is great, it looks great. So sometimes you can come in and present an FHA offer. It just ultimately depends. So, but this is some of the things that FHA appraisers look for when they're actually doing a house. So if you're looking to sell a house, these are some things that you should be aware of. FHA is a huge group of buyers. It's the majority of the first-time buyers out there, and quite honestly, probably the majority of all buyers out there, within a specific range. And FHA goes up to a pretty healthy amount for purchases. So accept FHA, and you'll probably get more for your house, and you'll get more buyers interested. So I really appreciate you guys tuning in. That's this episode of the Ask Jason Gelios show. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Visit my website. It's allabouttherealestate.com, which is the main hub for all my videos. And I really appreciate your guys' thoughts, your comments. If you have advice as to how you want this show, or rather what you want this show to cover, let me know. But I really appreciate you guys tuning in. I'm Jason Gelios, Michigan Realtor, and make it a great week.